Oh, yeah, it's time for another episode of We Love Comics, the show where we love comics, and you should too. On today's episode, we're going to be doing a very special giant-sized topic all about which company drew you into comics first. But before we get into that, let me introduce our distinguished panel. First off, from the great state of Tennessee, we've got the one and only Memphis's own Marcus Seaberry. Seaberry, how you doing?
I'm good, baby. Young Buck likes to call it Tennessee.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but he's from Nashville. He's from Nashville. Don't listen to him.
And from the crooked letter, Mississippi.
Yep.
We've got Hunter Camp, Danhausen Camp.
Yep.
Also, hey, Babu Frick.
You see him. Yes.
How's Hunter Camp doing?
He's tired because he does lots of things all the time. He's been playing Elden Ring nonstop for
He's almost
too long.
An Elden Lord, I heard.
He's not almost an Elden Lord. He's on his way, but he's not anywhere near being Elden Lord yet.
Oh, yeah. Well, I
He's
can't
got
wait
a lot of work to do
until Hunter Camp comes on this podcast and tells us that he is an Elden Lord and what that even means. But we'll find out someday, Seaberry. Someday.
I don't know that we will.
But not today.
No, definitely not today.
We're going to be talking all about... Now, Seaberry, this is your giant-sized topic. This comes from the mind of a Seaberry. So tell us all about it, Seaberry. What is the topic for this week?
Well, now before we do that, though...
we got something special. Hunter Camp.
I got to hit this new figure alert. All right, first of all, I got this Sasha Banks. It's elusive, but it's in pretty good condition. I was like, I'm going to get it. Found it at a game exchange. I was like, I'm normally more of a, in the package guy, but I was like, I'll make an exception.
You take Sasha Banks any way you can get her, honestly.
Yeah, these days. It ain't just see out there plentiful in the wild. And then I also got a mean Mark Callis. This is the Undertaker's identity when he was in WCW before he signed with WWE.
Nice.
Yeah, WWE kind of went old school on that. So I was like, yeah, let me go and get that.
That's a nice pickup, Seaberry.
Yeah, and also as a side thing, I'm a little bummed, man.
What happened?
BTS is taking a hiatus.
I know.
I was like, no.
I know.
No more Boy With Love.
The good news is
I gotta find a new K-pop group now.
Well, the good news is that first and foremost, the members are doing their own thing for a little bit, so there's no saying that they won't come back eventually.
Right.
But every NSYNC needs a Timberlake.
Man, if we ain't talking about no RM solo album, I don't want to hear it.
Dang.
That's what I'm saying. I need RM to go and drop this solo dolo. But I want. I mean, I'm joking a little bit, but like I was a little messed up. Like I was like, no, BTS are going on hiatus.
I'm actually like, I love Blackpink, so K-pop is fantastic.
I will say.
Okay, I might have to get the Blackpink to fill my BTS void.
Well, you're not going to hear the guys sing, so it's an all-female group, but they're great. You'll still get your K-pop.
Hey man, I'm open, but I guess to get us back on track, my K-pop detour notwithstanding, I just began thinking, we did origin stories, but I guess it's kind of like a spin-off of origin stories. Like, what was, the publisher that kind of drew you in the comics at first, and like, why? And also, has it changed over the years?
So
Yeah.
do you mind if I answer that first?
Yeah,
Do you
go
mind if I
first,
start?
Hunter Camp.
Hey, okay. So I think like if you tie my origin story like from last week or from 2 weeks ago, um, it was Batman. And so like for me, it's always Batman. There will never be something that's going to replace that. Now that's by default DC. But so like when you go into like the Justice League, you learn more, right? I think it's natural to start to fill out within DC. But at the same time, and I think this is kind of where it's interesting, like each time that I got into comics at a, like, because I think I said like there was 4 different eras. I went to different publishers each time. So when I was young, like I started buying X-Men comics, and so that pulled me into like the Marvel's miniseries, and then to get the Captain America, because I think there was like a Captain America show in the 80s too. Is that right? Or there was like a movie. Anybody
There
remember that
was
one?
a movie.
Yes. So I remember seeing the TV movie and like actually loving it. So like that was where it was like toys and that. So really when I was a teenager, it was Marvel. And then when I got back into like comics, like around the time I was just buying trades, it was DC. And then when I got back in proper with like events and everything, it was DC. But I think it was more because like of Grant Morrison and his work that I really started to just dig in more. And then that took me back to Marvel also with the new X-Men run. So then I went and read like all the other like X-Men stuff that came after that. And so it's kind of an interesting thing. And then I just hopped over to indie stuff. And now that I'm getting back into it and I'm still in kind of a trade space, I feel like I'm not in a specific place at all. Like I'm just kind of like picking and choosing. So like now like I'm reading more manga. I started Berserk. um I've touched base on like sort of like the indie versions of DC books, so like the Mr. Miracle book, uh other stuff from Marvel, so like Marvel and more along the lines of Marvel events or like big comics like the Loki book and all that stuff. So it's really strange, and I really want to hear what you guys have to say too, and that's why I wanted to talk first, was just to give you kind of like an overview, because I'm kind of touching on everything and I'm kind of going into different places. So mine has not been, I've not had a consistent favorite publisher. I think I think I know more about DC just because I spent a lot of time when I got back in proper and did like the Grant Morrison thing, and then jumped into Green Lantern through all the events that were going on. And I went back into the history of DC and then just dug. And I think that also with DC, it's a little bit, I don't want to say simpler, um, because we're going to talk about the characterizations, I'm sure, but that's not necessarily something that draws me in. So like I don't really necessarily need a relatable character to read
I don't know
something.
if it was well, I'll say for a time,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Marvel characters were a little more complex.
Yeah, but then they're relatable, right? So like in general, that's like Marvel's characters are the more complex, the more relatable. It's something that feels like a human being as opposed to like this like thing.
Archetypes.
And DC, yeah, like the archetypes of heroes, which is funny because like DC also went, I think when I started to fall out of love with DC, it was when they decided, well, no, we need to be like, everybody needs to be super flawed and it's got to be real dark. And it's like, I don't mind real dark stuff. And I think of like, I can evidence that by looking around the room, or just talking about like the things I've talked about. But like some things don't need to be that. And I think that you need to offer something different. So to go in and kind of not even go the Marvel route, but just go like the ultra way, right? Like to go way too far on the deep end of like these characters are flawed. That feels like what they did. So ultimately what I'm saying is I think that with DC, it was a little bit simpler to get and to understand and to go deeper in, because like they had very clearly defined reset spaces for the whole line of comics, if you were going to do that. So like with the different crisis books and everything, where it's like, okay, well, we're changing everything and everything's going to like come from this point, right? So with Final Crisis all the way to Crisis on Infinite Earths, all of that. They give you a space to learn more about like the big events that have happened. Whereas when I looked for Marvel, it was like, here's this one really big X-Men book, here's another really big X-Men book, here's some like ancillary like Captain America books. There's something that happens with Cap, but doesn't necessarily affect too much of what goes on in other things. So you have to, I think, do more work to like catch yourself up with Marvel comics as opposed to DC. So I think that was one of the draws to me for DC at that time.
Well, yeah, I mean, I used to joke that DC never met a reboot they didn't like.
True.
And Seaberry, you were growing up a little bit before us. How was it in the 80s with, I know all of us are going to talk about Marvel and DC pretty much as our first company, right?
Well, yeah, but the first one's either Marvel or DC, because remember, I was getting random 3-packs. You know, there was some Marvel 3-packs, like, you know, G.I. Joe Marvel 3-packs, other Marvel 3-packs, a DC 3-pack. And I had forgotten, but there was also some Whitman Comics 3-packs in my time. Whitman was a short-lived publisher. They had the rights to Flash Gordon. Like they had a Flash, because I got a 3-pack. They had a Flash Gordon comic. And I think it also had like maybe Turok, Son of Stone.
Oh wow.
And Doc Solar, Man of the Atom.
Ah.
Yeah, I guess there was a point in the 80s where Whitman had the license to all those properties. Also, I think Whitman, now it might have been Whitman that also had the license to Magnus Robot Fighter.
So were they like the Dynamite of the 80s?
Or maybe the Valiant of the 80s? Because I remember when Valiant dropped it out, I was like, hey, I used to read that Whitman comics. And I was like, oh, okay. Here they are. But it's different. So that was my beginnings. Then, like I said, the Superpowers tours and getting the Batman and the Outsiders subscription kind of made me hone in on DC, because I would just be like, all right, this is my comic right now. I'm getting this Batman.
You wanted to ask you a question about that?
Adventures of the Outsiders on a monthly basis. Then my cousin Eugene kind of shamed me, like, man, like silly juvenile, you're reading DC. Check out this Marvel Avengers. And I was like, do y'all have a character like the Beyonder? I'm like, yeah, the Anti-Monitor in Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Did you find that? Yeah, did you find that the suit, like, the Batman and the Outsiders, like, made you more interested in DC overall?
Not really. Like, that was just like the comic I got every month. Like, I'm getting this Batman and the Outsiders. Cause like, but I was just getting that, and like I was curious about stuff. I definitely was curious about Crisis. I think I've said on this show before, like, you give me a house that had a Superman holding Supergirl and she dead and everybody around her crying, I was like, oh, this is it. This is big, bad. Like, they killed Supergirl. Oh my gosh. Right. But like, you know, little dude, not really fully getting the allowance, getting stuff. I guess I was content, but then once I, like I said, saw my friend Eugene's comic collection, and it was Marvel heavy, and he just kind of was like, oh, you poor DC fan. That kind of lit the spark about finding out more about Marvel. I guess that, and, you know, the Marvel cartoons hit different. Like Super Friends or Superpowers, like, that was cool, but like, it took Superpowers, Galactic Guardians, like their last incarnation, to really be like, oh, okay, so DC characters are flawed. And there's an episode where Batman and Robin are chasing a scarecrow and they wind up in Crime Alley. And like, you see Batman tear up and run away. And it's like, oh, okay. So now we're dealing with their flaws. But, you know, Marvel was always like that. Like, you know, in Peter Parker's origin story, Uncle Ben is murdered. You know, well, I didn't really know all about the X-Men, but they just look cool. Like when I see them, I like Spider-Man and his amazing friends. And then, you know, I just got more into it. I think another random, well, no, this wasn't a random 3-pack. It was Secret Wars 2, 1 through 3.
That's pretty good.
I got that, I read that, and I was like, oh, and these are the X-Men, and these are these characters, and the Beyonder, and that was the guy behind that Secret Wars, because I got Secret Wars action figures as well. I had Kang, I had Wolverine, I had Captain America, then later on I had the black costume Spider-Man. So then that kind of was, you know, piquing my interest. Then I think maybe like a year or less than a year after that, I went to a Walgreens. I bought the Gang War issue of Amazing Spider-Man, where Spider-Man thinks he's fighting Kingpin, but it's hello.
Keep going.
But it's here, Daredevil in a fat suit. You know, some random issue of Web of Spider-Man where he fought some alien in like a classic X-Men, because, you know, from Secret Wars to Apprentice, I was like, X-Men. I think they're cool.
So when did you really like fall in, like kind of like, do you feel like you fell in love with the X-Men at that time?
Honestly, their appearance in Secret Wars 2 #1 was our meet cute, if you pardon the expression. And it just kind of grew from there, man. Because like the next time, fast forward to March of '88, and I'm like, I'm going to get serious about comics. I'm going to get comics on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
I'm 11, you know, the allowance money coming in from, you know, the good, and, you know, money from the good grades. I think I would get like $1 for every A.
That's nice. I would have made $0.
Hey, man, once you start reading and doing stuff well, it's just, you know, it's like, oh, you're smart. This is how good you can be.
Right.
So this is where you have to be, or else, because, you know,
right.
It was the 80s and parents could still threaten you.
Of course. So like I'm just so interested in this because it's like I missed Secret Wars, I missed all that. And I think when I tried to go back to it, it was like out of print. So whenever I tried to do the thing the proper way with Marvel, like I never did. So like I dug and tried to find as hard as I could, like what the best, you know, ways to get to know the X-Men better. So it's like, and I think that X-Men really just does a really like a great job somehow for teenagers to like really get people in, because that's what happened to me too, because it was the X-Men show that made me want to read the comics, and then I was able to go a little bit further and read more X-Men stuff.
Yeah, I agree, because like my first regular issue, I think I talked about before, X-Men 232. Longshot finds the Reaver's treasure trove, and they go around the world returning that to people. That's their first time really interacting with Gateway too in that issue, the Aboriginal mutant with the power of teleportation. So yeah, like I was Marvel, man. I was like, I probably didn't buy another DC book until like '89, I think. I bought an issue of Detective Comics with Norm Brayfogle doing the art.
Yeah.
And I bought a Justice.
I may have bought that one too.
I
may have gotten that one also.
Okay. And I bought a Justice League. I think it was Justice League at this point, but it was one that started out as Justice League and then Justice League International. It was Guy Gardner and Isis' first date. And like they running the Black Hand, but Black Hand is such a joke and a goofball at this point. Like it messes me up when they like make him a like real deal threat.
Oh yeah. You
know, later on in DC Comics.
Yeah, that was the DC thing to do.
Because I was like, it's Black Hand. He's a goober. And I think I got into like Batman Year 3 a little bit, and what was the next one? Well, then I picked up, because I had to stop. I would always have to start buying books in the fall to make sure I had money to buy my Christmas present. So like, then about December. So after I quit, after I saved my money, it's like December '89. Batman picks up after A Lonely Place of Dying. A Lonely Place of Dying is where Tim Drake first appears as Robin.
Uh-huh.
He figures out Batman and Robin secret identity. Comes to Dick Grayson like, look, man, Batman needs a Robin. He's like, yeah, but I'm Nightwing, you know. Titans. This is kind of what I do now. Sorry, kid.
Didn't you read
he
Teen
becomes
Titans?
Robin. I said, so I saw a little bit of that kind of off and on. Then I think I was back on Marvel. Then I think, you know, like every once in a while, some Batman stuff, some Justice League stuff would get in. Of course, I had to buy the Death of Superman. You know, that was just epic.
I think we need to talk about not necessarily the story of Death of Superman, and we don't have to do it on this episode, but the cultural impact and what happened around the death of Superman. Because like I first saw the death of Superman in a Books a Million, which was, you know,
in a what?
Books a Million.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was my first, like, I was like, what in the world is that? Yeah.
I've been reading about it, but I mean, by this point though, in '92 when this happens, I'm 16 and I'm starting to get hip to the game. Like I know I'm like they're not gonna let Superman stay dead. Like he, you know, he's a bit of a cash cow for the company.
Yeah.
But yeah, we should probably I can't say that for his own episode, or maybe just an episode about like the speculator times.
Yes.
But yeah, so like, you know, now I'm emphasizing the DC stuff for this specific, but like I'm still reading Marvel, still reading X-Men, still reading Amazing Spider-Man. I think the period where I collected the most DC comics was honestly probably right before New 52 began.
Yeah, that was a good time though. Like the comics that were coming out at that time were really good.
Like man, Gail Simone's Secret Six,
Frankie Miller's Batgirl.
That was some good stuff, my man. Like
that was the Morrison era Batman. That was
Frankie
Miller on Batgirl. All that really good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but like then I don't
Black
know.
Mirror?
Man.
Scott Snyder's Black Mirror.
I wasn't really messing with it. I mean, I kind of knew a little bit about that.
That was good.
But like, man, New 52 just lost, man. Like, I bought all the issues of the short-lived Static series. I was trying to buy Batgirl. I jumped out Batgirl too soon because I went back and bought and checked the trades at the library. That did turn out to be good. Justice League left me cold because everybody was a jerk. I was like,
yeah, that was
it's
just
like a
bad.
whole team full of Guy Gardners. That doesn't work.
And like what they did to Aquaman, and he was just like, I'm tough. And it's like, okay, like give me a break.
Yeah, that was just crazy. But
with New 52, they had such good. They had Static. They had I Vampire, which was fantastic.
Yes.
The zombie comic, which was fantastic. Justice League Dark was fantastic. Like all those little guys that lasted like 10 issues max was like, those were all great.
I was getting random trades out of the library, people like Mr. Terrific and stuff like that. I don't know, it just didn't really grab me. And like even right now at this current time, the only DC stuff I'm getting on a monthly basis are, I'm gonna say some of them, like all of the first wave of Milestone, like, you know, I got all the Icon and Rocket, I got all the Static, I got all of Hardware. But like this next little wave, I'm getting Blood Syndicate, but I don't know if I'm gonna get to like all the other little second wave of Milestone stuff. But like
Blood Syndicate
right
was the
now,
gang?
What is it? Dark Crisis?
Yeah,
I think that's what it's called. Yeah,
the new thing is Dark Crisis. Yeah, I don't want to touch that.
Yeah, that's the big event. I'm like looking at it. It's on the floor over here.
that's where probably it belongs. No offense, but that's where I would put Dark Crisis also.
Oh wow, dude!
I don't care about it at all. There's nothing I care about it.
I mean, it's a little bit like, where they killed the Justice League. And, I think there's going to be a chance for Dick Grayson to get shine, because I'm always about that. Because I'm like, if you want a Batman that's not an a-hole, read Nightwing.
Well, I don't think that's fair, but okay.
Sir,
I don't think
in
that's
the
fair.
comics, hear me out.
Some of the comics.
In the comics,
Mm-hmm.
Batman's pretty much a billionaire going around beating up on drug addicts and homeless people, man.
That people say that way more than it actually happens. I just like to point out that is not accurate.
Okay.
Yes. It's partially accurate, but not all the way accurate.
But beyond that, he's manipulative, and he's just.
We all have manipulative nature, but in hashtag in defense of Batman. Here's the thing, that's become a really great narrative for people to have over the past few years, and good job. But at the same time, it just depends on who's writing him. And so, like, I think if the writers have like a reverence for the character, I think most of the time they don't do it. But like, you've got guys that Jeff Johns, when he would write him in Justice League, or when he would write him in the Earth One comic, it's like that became the new like way to portray Batman. And it's like, yeah, he can be manipulative, and he's not perfect or by any means. He's not like the nicest guy, but overall, it's not as we kind of suggest it is.
Okay, I get it, but also, like, I'm glossing over stuff though, because there's been periods where I, like, a random Dark Horse comic will catch my eye, or I remember Tokyo Pop, like in the early 2000s, them Tokyo Pop mangas.
They're so good.
Yeah. I like food with a lot of them. Like I said, now it's probably like, I don't know, like 90% Marvel in my like monthly stuff, 5% DC, and probably like 5% just other random stuff. Cause I really been trying. Honestly, Justin and the guys back we on Geekland, they kind of pushed me to try more non-superhero stuff, and I consider my transitional comic to be Scott Pilgrim. Because it's not superhero, but it does have fights and powers and abilities. Yeah. So it's like, it has superhero leanings. And I don't know, Oni will just come out with stuff every once in a while that'll grab me, like their wrestling manga, Super Pro KO. I hated it. I had 3 issues.
I have the volume of it or whatever.
Yeah. They had another one about some people piloting a giant robot. I think it might have been in Georgia or something.
I know what you're talking about. They also did they put out I don't remember what the name of the book was, but it was like, I think it was a Cullen Budden comic, but it was the Western. That was really good. It was something about the gun. Yeah, I think that was Oni.
And they also put out some books I talked about last week.
The Sixth Gun.
Sci-Fu.
The Sixth
Gun. It's a cool little story. It blends like kung fu stuff and 80s hip hop and all kind of cool stuff. So like, I show some love to the indies, and Image has of like, I was into Bitterroot, other little random comics, Ultra Mega. Now, one thing I tend to do, and this is me, maybe it's a cost-cutting move, I'm not always as inclined to go monthly on non-superhero stuff, because most non-superhero stuff seems to be self-contained.
The funny thing about that, and you're right, the funny thing about that is like, the non-superhero stuff is the things that you like need to buy monthly so that they can put out like collected editions and stuff like that. That's the irony behind that, but I understand completely.
I'll say this: if it's at Image, and I know this is not, absolute, but I assume their chances of getting the collected are good. Like a lot of times I buy the first issue and see if I like it.
Yeah.
Especially in terms of, you know, shows like this. Like I buy the first issue, see if I like, oh, okay, this is good. I get it. Now, like I said, I bought every single issue and special of Bitterroot. That just spoke to me. You know, the black family in Harlem in the 20s fighting monsters. That just, you know, spoke to me in all the ways. And plus it was David Walker writing, who I interviewed on Black Nerd Power before.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but you know, like I said, it's still mainly Marvel, but you know, I'm open, I'm trying. Like I know Titan is gonna be doing some Kamen Rider comics. Like they've got the license to put some of those out, you know, in English. So, you know, I'm probably gonna fool with that, things like that. But yeah, like I said, it's been mainly Marvel, I guess, since like 86, 87. But like, you know, but I still appreciate and respect other companies. It's just, I don't know. I have a Marvel zombie gene that just is dominant.
Yeah.
Won't lay dormant.
I have a
The
similar
gene.
story to both of you, almost like a blended of the two of you, where I talked about in the origin story. My dad got me into comics and superheroes. He read DC when he was a kid. So Superman, Batman, The Flash, those were his favorites. And so those are the ones he kind of put in front of me. And then around that time, the Tim Burton Batman was coming out. So there was that on the big screen. I was always watching the Christopher Reeve Superman movie growing up, all four of them. I was a huge fan. I wanted to be Christopher Reeve when I was growing up. So
You
Superman,
Man, I think
Superman,
we all did. Like, in all honesty, I really think we all wanted to be Christopher freaking
yeah, he was
Reeve.
the personification of that character. Like he looked like Superman, and they just the way that they did the special effects in that first film of him flying was fantastic. So I had that DC core when I first got into comics, but then I also, from as far back as I can remember, I was into Spider-Man. And so Spider-Man pulled me into Marvel. From there, everything I was reading was based off of Spider-Man. Like, oh, Daredevil, that's Spider-Man's friend. I know him because he was in an issue of Spider-Man one time. And Captain America. Oh, Spider-Man looks up to Captain America. So that's how so all of my knowledge, or my worldview, came through Spider-Man's worldview, and him being that relatable hero. At the time as a kid, I didn't get that, but I just thought he was funny. That was the main thing for me. Was I thought Peter Parker was hilarious as a kid. So that's what drew me to Peter Parker and Spider-Man. So we're talking early 90s. It was all Marvel stuff. And then in the middle 90s, I kind of got out of comics. When I came back, it was because of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie and Ultimate Spider-Man from Brian Michael Bendis. Those were things that kind of modernized it for me, and got me interested again, and actually got me going into comic book shops again. So from there, I started listening to podcasts, and that's when I started to dive into Independence, Image, and all these other books, all these other companies. But I
Yeah,
always had that strong
I
Marvel.
do, because I struggled reading Ultimate Spider-Man monthly, mainly because like there would be issues where there'd be no Spider-Man. I'd be like, what
did you do with my guy?
huh?
What did you do with my little web slinger?
I know. I'm like, but the book's called Spider-Man. There's no Spider-Man. But then, like, man, Justin was like darn near force feeding me trades. Like, just read it, Seaberry. I'm like, okay, it's good. Okay. Bendis knows what he's doing. Bendis clearly has long-term plans for this book. I was like, I'm seeing the web, if you'll pardon the pun.
Yeah. You know what's weird is that, like, as somebody who's not like a big Marvel guy like myself, I could pretty much pick up any Spider-Man or any X-Men and read it. Like, for like Cap or like the events or Daredevil or anything like that, like it has to be like a really, really good for me to want to read it, and to actually go through and sit down and do it. But like Spider-Man, I could easily read, and like X-Men, I could easily read. And I think that's interesting that's both of those are the ones that like pull you in.
Yeah, and those ones kind of oscillate, I think, in popularity of like what is the most popular, because sometimes it's Spider-Man, sometimes it's Wolverine.
Yeah,
and
which is cool, I
Man,
guess.
I see the logo. Y'all remember that?
Yeah, which one?
Like the Marvel Comics logo that you would see on like Generation X or something like that was like
Was that the big M?
that, but then later on, like they put like a little like cartoony looking Spider-Man, like
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay,
like mid crawl on
Yeah.
top of it.
very
But-
cool.
I remember that.
Like also in the early 90s, it seemed like you were a new character. You were going to have a Spider-Man appearance within your first hobby. Even freaking Super Pro, like licensed stuff like NFL Super Pro, they were like, yeah, throw Spider-Man in an issue. That'll get the kids coming.
I always had that kind of Marvel identity, like Seaberry. I considered myself a Marvel zombie growing up, but when I got back into it in the early to mid 2000s, that's when I started getting into DC, going into the history of DC. Because, like I said, I had that original run in the 80s where I was like, oh, yeah, Crisis and Superman and what's going on here, like the John Byrne Superman, Man of Steel reboot. But after I got out of it and came back, I was like, oh, let me read Year One. Let me read Dark Knight Returns, all these classic Long Halloween, all these classic DC books. And then I fell in love with the DC universe, as well as they were just putting out fantastic animation at that time. The DC animated stuff was the Justice League, first of all, Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, Justice League. And then they started putting out those movies. So the DC universe also was grabbing me. So I was kind of being pulled from both ends. And then when we were doing Geekland, when we were doing the comic book podcast, I wanted to talk about everything. So I was reading Image, I was reading Dark Horse, whatever I could that was people said was good. Hey, this is a good book. Read this. I was just reading it. So at that point, I was like, all right, I'm no longer a Marvel zombie. I love DC. I love Image. I love anything. Just tell me a good story at that point.
I think being Willie Gillis's friend, possible to like not deal with something indie or creative. Like
here's Umbrella Academy.
Yes.
Yeah. Even Donnie Jungling, who's a longtime employee of Comics and Collectibles in Memphis, Tennessee, where we used to record Geekland, he was like, of you all, Willie has the best taste. And
he does have really good taste.
Almost set your watch to it. Like whoever Willie was championing, normally within like a year to a year and a half, Marvel or DC would be like, hey, here's loads of money. Come right here.
Yeah. Right. And Hunter, it's interesting when you were saying about getting into or DC being easier to get into than Marvel. I thought you would have said the opposite because of all the reboots, where Marvel just because they didn't really play too much in the multiverse as much as DC, it was kind of like one long timeline.
But that long timeline makes it more complicated because like of all the things that happen and like the continuity behind it. It's like, because especially with X-Men, like that can get real intimidating because it's like, well, this person is this person and this person like married this person but had a child with this other person, and now that person is living the future and has come back into the past and has created a clone that also like has a bodyguard that has taken out the original person's dad, but that was in the past, and I don't even know how that happened because they would split the timeline. So yeah, that's like that's X-Men. Like where
well, I think you could say that about DC too, because you could be like, oh well, the Justice Society was the original Justice League, but now they rebooted it, so now the Justice League was the original.
But that's the thing though, it's like when they do the reboots, they like they say, okay, well, this is a starting point, so like you could go to this era and then read around that, and then you're like, okay, then they, and I didn't say it was good, like mind you.
Well, the problem is
usually not.
then they would just retcon it and be like, oh yeah, remember that stuff we said didn't happen? Yeah, it happened.
It did.
So
yeah, but like
No.
but by that time, like if you're doing that, like if you're reading those comics or whatever, then in that type of situation, it's a little bit easier to follow at that point, because it's like, oh, okay, like now this can start to make sense when they do a retcon. I don't like it. I don't like it. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's not good. And again, I'm not suggesting that it's good. I'm saying that it's easier to start reading one of those things.
But I gotta say, guys, shortly after, like, I guess around the time they did Rebirth, which was on the heels of New 52, and DC was like, you know what? Everything's canon, darn it.
Yeah, I know.
Like, at first it blew my mind, because, you know, I'm a old head. But then I think it helped me. Like, I think he kind of freed me. Like, it helped me take the steps to be like, okay, well, you know what? I can accept all these. Because one of the first times I was on Geekland, Justin, I don't know if you remember this, but I was like, talking about Marvel alternate realities. I was like, back then there was only one idea. That was MC2. That's where you got Spider-Girl and J2 and A-Nix, because it diverged from a point in the 90s. You kind of gave me a greater appreciation for, you know, the Ultimate Universe, and I thank you. But like, now though, today, it's just commonplace. Like, hey, all right, this story is in its own reality, own timeline. Like that Batman and Catwoman book that's Black Label. That's his own little alternate timeline. And, you know, Marvel has a gang of them. And like, even though there was a time when they were making me cringe, I've just slowly become indoctrinated, man. I just come to accept it. Like, all right, you know, there are several alternate versions. You can, because, you know, I was so used to, you know, freaking asterisks and what are you talking about occurred in this issue of X-Men, and, you know, on the letters page, you know, and connecting the dots. And like, that's there, but there's also the freedom of, hey, here's a version that's not all encumbered by continuity and weighed down by all that. Here's something a little easier to get into. You know, now there was a time, especially like around the time I first met y'all, you know, as a grumpy old comics fan, I would have cried. But like, it kind of helped me, man. It's like now I'm not saying I rush out and buy every little alternate version or whatever, every variant. That's the word the kids use, variant.
They do. Yeah, they do. Is that Loki's fault? Is that Loki's fault, or is that somebody else's fault?
I think the Loki series popularized use of word variant.
Probably. I think they
like,
probably did.
Marvel has a book coming either out or coming out soon about alternate versions of Jessica Jones called The Variant.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But like,
one
kind of just to be a little more open-minded about that is what I'm saying.
Right. And one of the things that like I will again say that with DC, like they did this. They did multiversity, you know, and it was like, here is a book by an insane person that ties all of these different universes together. And it's like, as far as I know, there's not something that's like dedicated that or that kind of dedicated for something with Marvel. It's not like, here's a reference book that is actually comics that is like, hey, here's your linchpin of everything. Here's where you can see like how the different universes in that universe connect to each other. I think that was really cool. This is one of my favorite things, so it's very cool.
I also had to say, and I'm sorry, just because I feel like we cut off your story. I apologize, but I'm gonna make this point, and I'm gonna let you finish. I have an Emperor's New Clothes approach to whatever Grant Morrison does. If you remember the story of the Emperor's New Clothes, there's a point where he walking around buck booty naked, and people are like, I don't see his clothes. Well, I must be a fool. Then eventually, you know, some little girl like, no, he just buck booty naked. I don't have the little girl when it comes to Grant Morrison. If there is a storyline that I do not get, I blame myself. I said,
no.
I'm just not smart enough. And then I tell myself, you know, I needed this. I needed to see the limits of my intelligence.
Dude, that's so Grant Morrison is Elden Ring. Or like Elden Ring is Grant Morrison. It's like punishing, and it's like if you don't like, but everybody can do it. You just have to like allow yourself to.
I kind of get. I'm not really a gamer, but I kind of get that.
Yeah.
But I just like, no, it ain't Grant Morrison. It's me, because that guy's what we call smarty art. he is smart art. I was like, maybe I need to get a degree in comparative literature in my spare time or something. Then
he ran up the steps of Kathmandu in one breath.
That's actually
he saw aliens.
That's actually a good topic for a future episode.
Mm-hmm.
Creators that we loved and where are they now, kind of thing. And we've talked about Brian Michael Bendis in this episode, and we talked about Grant Morrison. Those are two guys that, in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, I was like, these guys are at the top of their game. And then if you cut to now in 2022, Grant Morrison was doing the Green Lantern book, and Hunter and I started reading that. But did you ever get caught up on that, Hunter?
No, because like I couldn't find whatever the second volume was supposed to be, or like the third volume or whatever. Because they did that in seasons, but it was like season 1, volume 1. And I was like, I found that, but then season 1, volume 2, I couldn't find. You started on season 2, so you didn't have any idea what was going on.
Right.
Man, the first few monthly issues, like when they first started, and I was like, this is heavy. I like it, but I love it. I'll get the trade someday.
Yeah.
Someday is yet to come.
Yeah. I like it okay.
But I think we should definitely do a topic on that, like creators that I wouldn't say fell off, but they're not at the same level that they were at. So we'll put a pin in that and come back on a future episode. But what I wanted to say about the end of my journey up until now in 2022, when I came back from the snap after after Thanos took me out for 5 years, I have come back, and 95% of my books that I read are Marvel. And the reason why is because of Marvel Unlimited. That app has made it so easy to, like today, I was reading King in Black, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. This King in Black ties in with Venom. Oh, I'm going to read these Venom issues. Oh, wait a minute. Now I want to read Miles Morales. Oh, now the Miles Morales, there's a tie-in to this book. And I'm able to go, and I don't pay any money. I'm not buying other issues. Just having that monthly subscription and having everything at my fingertips has been a game changer. And the DC app, the DC Infinite, has been such a mess. I subscribed to both of them, and I ended up letting my DC one expire, and I've kept up with the Marvel one. And just having those not a la carte, but having those subscription models versus a la carte has been a game changer for me. And I want to get back into DC, but it's been very tough for me to be pulled away from Marvel, because there's so much stuff that I missed and so much stuff that I want to get caught up on. I just found it easier on Marvel Unlimited. So hopefully I can get back into DC. And
DC legit lost me. They did.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you, besides, actually, you know what? The only one I was keeping up with was the main Batman book. And then I was kind of reading some Batman ancillary stuff. And there's like 20 Batman books right now. Not even talking about Bat Family. I'm just talking about Batman. And it's like Batman the Reptile. Like there's like 90 different Batman books. Like, what is going on?
And because I don't like, I'll say, when they portray him in a manipulative manner. Is that fair? Camp? I'm phrasings that don't bother you.
I'll allow it.
Thank you. I'm at this point where, like, I'll read books set in Gotham. Like, Gotham Academy was my jam. It was just these kids that are at Gotham Academy getting into hijinks. We Are Robin was my jam.
Nice.
And Duke Thomas came from that, and like now, I'm like the whole Bat Family, and I feel like Batgirls with Cassandra Cain and Stephanie Brown. Yeah, I'm thinking that's gonna be the one I'm gonna probably get in trade, because I'm like, okay, This is a Gotham book. I don't have to worry about the possibility of a mean, manipulative Batman being in it.
See, at DC, I've been following creators because, like, the Tom Taylor Nightwing,
Yeah.
I've heard fantastic stuff about, but I haven't had a chance to catch up on. And Chip Zdarsky is now jumping on Batman, so I definitely want to get caught up on that.
It's like if you see a DC book that you feel is going to get canceled or like has a really strong good possibility that it'll get canceled, that's probably a book that you want to read because that's going to be the good one.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Justice League, but maybe I'll get caught up someday.
Okay.
Hey man, number 1 was pretty good. All right.
Yeah. So that's where, I was gonna say that's where I'm at right now. Is I'm 95% Marvel at this point.
I understand.
So I think that was a pretty good topic, Seaberry. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think it was a good one
for bringing that to our attention. And I always
what they say about necessity being the mother of invention. Because I was like, just not done yet. I have something about Saturday, and Saturday was winding on, and I was and basically I started doing a Winnie the Pooh impersonation. Think, oh, and I was like,
it was a good one though.
Yeah,
and I connected the dots, man. And I made it happen, baby.
Nice.
You did good.
Thank you.
I also want to thank everyone out there for listening to this episode of We Love Comics, or if you're watching on YouTube, thank you very much. Maybe you can leave us a comment down below and let us know which company were you more drawn to coming in, Marvel or DC, and did it change? That's a 2-part question. You can also, if you're so inclined, leave us a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. 5 stars or get out, right?
Yeah, and remember, 5 stars is 7 stars in Japan.
Oh, dang. That is a Dragon Ball reference.
It's not.
I want
it's a
to
Dave
let
Meltzer reference.
Everyone know that they can check out Hunter Camp streaming on Twitch.
Yes, we're getting back to it at twitch.tv/I am Hunter Camp.
Oh, yeah. And they can check out Seaberry over at CineSundry. He just reviewed that Nick Cage movie.
Yeah. I like both of the end was a little wonky for me, but yeah, so The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is my latest review at CineSundry. So you can see that on the basically typing in CineSundry on YouTube. It's through the On Location Memphis YouTube channel. Also, just to let you know, literally yesterday I recorded reviews of The Bubble and Top Gun Maverick.
Wee.
So look for those. And, also I was a podcast that I was involved with that's on a bit of a hiatus, Black Nerd Power. You can get all our past episodes on the Kudzukian app. That is KUDZUKIAN. And, your boys out here, man, be on the lookout for the animated project Orange Mound Bound. We are working on that. And, I just get offered a role as a funeral director in an indie film. I'll let y'all know if it
That's what I'm talking about.
Actually shows up in places where people can watch it. Because, sometimes it's the festival circuit. Sometimes they like, oh, no, we threw it on Amazon.
People can watch it,
Yeah.
Did you have something to add, Hunter Camp?
I saw a movie and I saw it in 4D and it was dumb.
What movie?
Jurassic World.
Oh, dang.
It was so bad.
Wow.
Oh man. I want to talk to you about that. I forgot that I saw the movie because it was so stupid.
Man. Yeah, we need to have that discussion, Hunter Camp. But this is a comic book podcast. It is called We Love Comics because we love comics.
And so should you.